Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with Carl Forehand, and we are continuing our podcast series on good questions that we ask either before, during, or maybe even after doing our deconstruction journey. And today's question is, who am I? So I'll let you kick it off, Carl.
Just say that both of us are kind of froggy a little bit. You had almost lost your voice.
I had a sinus infection
And so on. I'm not sure what the deal is with me. It's probably getting over having so many people in the house for a little while and
yeah, it's
recovering.
also the weather just keeps going back and forth, so
Yeah.
that's not helpful. It's February and it should be cold, but we've had some unseasonably warm days, which is nice if you're an educator and want to get your kids outside, but does kind of wreak havoc on your sinuses and allergies and things like that.
Yeah. So the question today is, who am I? And what does that just spark in you right away when you hear that question, who am I?
Probably a little bit of anxiety because for a long time, I wasn't really encouraged to figure that out, or it wasn't really a question that was ever asked, especially inside of church. You're just kind of told who you are and what you need to approve of or disapprove of, and what you need to like, who you need to love, those kind of things. So, I guess it still brings me a little bit of anxiety because probably I'm still working that question out.
Yeah, for sure. It's like when you kind of stepped out of being in that role, pastor and wife, for 20 years or so, right? And then being in a couple of big churches, like in the middle of that. And then after that, you just kind of step out. And that's kind of why we named our podcast The Desert Sanctuary, because that's what it felt like. We're just out in the middle of a desert. We're not sure what to do. And it really brings an identity crisis, right?
Yeah.
Who am I without the church? Am I still a Christian? Am I a progressive Christian? What's my label now? Because we kind of long for that group label to say this is what we're about, right? We're a Democrat or Republican. We're, football fans. We're not football fans. We cheer for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl this week, or we don't cheer for the Chiefs. But who am I? What do I do outside of this organization? And we've probably had conversations with people before where we're at a party or whatever. What do you do? Well, I'm this, right? It's always within the organization. Same with church, where just a considerable amount of our time attending services, planning for future events, helping volunteer with other events. And so our identity, like you said, is all wrapped up in that organization. So stepping away from church, almost every conversation we've had about deconstruction with people, they say they experienced that to some degree or another. It's just kind of a shock. Wait a minute, I don't have my system here to kind of guide me, right?
Right. Or like I said, to tell me what I need to believe or not believe.
And so it really is a form of PTSD. Like most people who go through deconstruction, we realize we had a certain amount of PTSD for the ministry. we discovered things about ourselves, but we also felt somewhat of an identity crisis. So felt like we're becoming more authentic. We're finding out what we like and so on, but it's still there's that mental health issue that we gotta deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
When you say mental health issue, like what are you referring to?
yeah, just the fact that we always would be willing to admit, well, I came into religion with some trauma. Well, what we don't admit also is that we also carried some of that out of organized religion. So when we carried that um, out with us, it's a real mental health issue. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just a butthurt thing about a certain church. It's not just that we're exploring new horizons and good for you for doing that. There's a real mental health
Mm-hmm.
issue that we need to address with a trauma informed counselor. We can talk through it with good listeners and empathetic listeners with somatic therapies and so on. But when the structure's removed, um, we come to understand how little effort we invested in our mental health and in nurturing a positive sense of self regarding who we were and our role in the world. So um, it's reminiscent of other professions where individuals are expected to devote themselves entirely to that profession, that faith, that job. And when we realize um, we need to step back from it,
Mm-hmm.
we realize we haven't spent enough time on self-care,
Right.
self-regulation, and on what is on our own personal identity. Right.
Well, and a lot of that is like those things aren't even mentioned.
Right.
They're not even talked about. So it's like we need something, but we don't know what we need because those things are never discussed inside the church. I don't know, maybe it's different now because we haven't been in the church for a while, but I'm guessing if it's changing incredibly slowly.
Yeah. So most people accept PTSD now as a diagnosis, but to some people that still sounds like hokum. But I'd encourage you to look into that because a lot of us have issues with that after we leave religion
Mm-hmm.
or step away from it. But we also got to look at what do I believe? I know what I was expected to believe,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe now I'm challenging hell or my thoughts around the queer community.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm starting to wrestle with some of those. But um, what do I really believe? Because for me, I went from attending a small Baptist church in high school where I really wasn't listening, or sometimes I did, but then I went to college and didn't think about church or God, and then just got back into a church that was like
Mm-hmm.
where I came from, and turned out not to be a great church. But we stayed in that denomination kind of loosely and
Mm-hmm.
at times, but for 20, 25 years, right? And so then now, wait, what do I believe? Well, this belief seems to be unraveling, but that also affects that other belief. And what do I do with it? So you just need to spend some time on who am I? What not my core identity. I want to be authentic. I want to look at that, but then what do I believe?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more? Like how, I don't know if we've had somebody on the podcast but it kind of defined belief in kind of a interesting way, but I can't remember what they said. I don't know if it was Derek Day or somebody like that. They were talking about how I don't know if beliefs are subjective or I don't
Yeah, and
know.
see, but a belief is always to make up for a gap. This is something
Mm,
I can't prove, and so but believing it doesn't make it true.
mm,
And so I think that's the tricky part with all of our beliefs or doctrines that someone has handed it to us, but we couldn't question them in the past, so now we can, right?
mm,
But what we usually find is that belief it's not totally a true, it doesn't mean it's a truth, and just believing in it. Um, I try not to use that word anymore, but even though I did in a heading in this blog, uh, what do I believe? But
that's interesting because, like, as an educator, one of the comprehension skills we teach is fact and opinion. And we always teach students that opinions start with things like I think, I believe,
yeah, so
I like. So it just makes me think that a belief is more of an opinion, but somehow we have twisted it to be fact.
yeah. And lately I've started kind of wrestling with the phraseology of uh, all theology is assumptions. So a belief is an assumption. It may have been one that we've carried on for hundreds of years.
And maybe that's why we think it's a fact, because it's been something that's been passed down for so long. We just assume now that it's fact.
Yeah, but the trouble is in science, you say, well, we don't know about that. And you admit it, then you can study it and try to find proof and keep looking at it and keep discovering things about it and doing experiments and so on. But in religion, we don't like to do that. So in religion, instead of saying we don't know, we say I believe because I have faith. That's why I have faith, because I can't prove it. But what people hear when they say that, well, that thing you believe in is true, and that's not true. And you kind of realize that after you get outside and you've seen how the sausage is made and you take a step back, that belief is an assumption. And so it may be better to say, not what do I believe, but what are my assumptions? I assume that hell is eternal conscious torment. That's starting to not make sense anymore. And the Church of Satan doesn't even worship Satan. So is Satan real? Is that an assumption I've made? Is that more about Dante than scripture? What do I assume? And you go from there.
Yeah.
But I think, we want to remove the restrictions and say, wait, because before it was just, what am I supposed to believe?
Right.
And can I swallow that? If I can and sign a piece of paper or get baptized or whatever, then I'm in and I'm accepted. And now I'm stuck with those assumptions. But deconstruction for me has been removing the restrictions to that and opening it up to exploration. And exploration has to say all the time, I don't know.
Right.
Not I believe in something I can't prove, but I can't prove it. So this is what I'm exploring. This is what I'm considering. This is what I think about. This is what might be true. But just opening yourself up to explore that.
I'm just wondering, like, can we still use the vocabulary I believe, but with a different intention behind it, the intention that I'm going to investigate. Like, maybe this is what I'm thinking right now. This is maybe what I believe, but I want to investigate. I want to stay curious as to why I believe that. Where did that come from? I think then we find out, when we do that, we're going to find out that a lot of the things that we thought were fact and that we believed in wholeheartedly are really just traditions that have been passed down.
Someone said to me, I think yesterday, or maybe I was just listening to someone say it, but they phrased it this way. They said, but what I'm learning is this. I'm learning this. I'm learning about this. It's way better than saying I've studied this for 5 minutes and now I believe what this other person believes. But it's more of I'm learning, I'm exploring, I'm discovering, I'm starting to understand. Um, and my questions are getting some answers, but I think you're right. This may even need to be, I mean, it's only titled that because that's how I thought of it all along.
Right.
But I agree with you. And I know Derek Webb talks about that a lot about about belief and
Yeah, maybe
how,
maybe it was Derek Webb I
yeah,
was thinking of.
just kind of how erroneous that is. It leads us down the wrong path. So, touch base with Derek Webb. Be glad you did.
Mhm.
But another question that arises in this process is, what do I like to do? So, who am I? Who am I? What do I assume? And what do I like to do? So, we visited a casino recently, which makes you really nervous.
Yeah,
Uh,
anytime there's big amounts of money floating around
yeah,
that could potentially, be lost.
yeah. It turns out we had some good communication.
Hmm.
We had fun. We got a discounted meal, which I think we shared. And um, anyway, but it's after we decided we're not going back to church, we
Hmm.
stood on our porch during church time. It was weird at first. It
Hmm.
seemed different. It took us a while to adjust, but we finally got to ask the question, what do we really like to do? What what feeds our soul, what makes us happy. And what I know, that the church programmed everything for me, including trunk or treat, which I don't want to go to.
Hmm.
So I want kids to come to my house and get candy here
Hmm.
and meet the people in our actual community. But what do I really like to do? Um,
That's kind of another one of those questions that can bring anxiety because, again, you really have to think about, what it is that you like to do and what don't you like to do that maybe you've been conditioned to have to do for, so long.
yeah, down here in the bottom of this blog, before determining our life's direction, we must invest time alone to understand ourselves. Once we grasp our identity, living authentically becomes possible, revealing our purposes and beliefs. Um, this is why I would never suggest remaining in the church while healing from religious trauma or seeking direction in your life. Religion often keeps us preoccupied with fulfilling the organization's objectives rather than directing energy towards personal growth. This focus is often considered self centered and unaligned with the organization's goals. So, furthermore, churches may offer retreats that aren't truly effective if we don't take time away from the demands of the ministry, which could be contributing to our issues.
Hmm.
So, you know, who am I becomes priority one. I think when you step back, organize religion, take a step back and start deconstructing, you gotta start asking these kind of questions and the existential questions. And I think when we discover who we are, it helps us know what to do.
Hmm.
Because the tendency as ministry workers is going to be to go start serving people and lose ourselves, forget about that we needed to do some self-care,
Hmm.
we needed some counseling, we needed uh, the things that other people need. Um, so earnestly exploring our identity based on the way we want to pursue that.
Yeah, and I think, not thinking that you have to have all the answers right away. Like, this is a process. It's like a lifelong journey if you want to look at it that way. And you don't have to have all the answers figured out, which is something that religion kind of teaches us. Like, you come here, we have all the answers that you need. Everything you need, you can get in 1 hour on a Sunday morning, and you'll be good. You'll be good for the week until you come back or whatever. But, you know, we look at this more as a journey of
Mm-hmm.
self-discovery.
Yeah.
And, you know, some days you want to work on it more than others, and that's okay. Some days you're going to get maybe more of an answer to one of these questions, and other days you won't. And that's okay too.
I was, I know we're similar now in that one of the things we're pursuing is everything that has to do with the brain. Whole brain teaching for you, attachment and trauma network for both of us. We're volunteering there real soon, and so on. But I've always wanted to understand the brain, or why people do the things they do. And so all of the things I've learned about the brain and trauma and everything like that has been post religion.
Right.
Because that was never a priority. That, you don't need to worry about your body, your inside, because by the way, you're disgusting and God hates you and all that. So I I always wanted to figure out why do people do the things they do? How does all that work? But I never had time to do it, or even to explore the idea that that's what I wanted.
But I feel like churches, like especially I'm talking about people at the very top of the organization, I feel like they do know a lot about the brain and neurochemicals and things like that. And that's why services are conducted in such a way that it feeds your brain the neurochemicals that it needs from week to week, just enough so that it'll wear off throughout the week and you'll have to come back in order to get another hit. And we talked about that being addicted. But I do think that some, and that's what makes me think even more so that it's an organization, because it's like a marketing process. Like they're thinking of ways to get people in the doors and keep people in the seats. And you have to, I mean, if you think about advertising on TV, that's all brain research. Like somebody's not going to get on there with, if you're, I'm thinking about the Super Bowl coming up, they have, they purposefully have those commercials so that people will watch the Super Bowl. They may not care about football, but they really want to see those commercials because it's tapping into something neurochemically in their brain. And hopefully, I mean, I'm sure advertisers really, really hope that it will cause people to buy their product. Well, I think the same is true with churches or religious organizations, I think they know more about brain research, but it's kept very quiet from the everyday churchgoer.
Yeah.
Because if we knew more, we may not attend.
Yeah, even back in the 90s, way back, I remember them starting at that time, which has now been a while ago. Um, they would they were going to conferences, starting to go to conferences that we could never afford to go to.
Right.
But about worship music and how that affects the brain and so on. And I think you're right. I'm willing to pursue it in that light, but then there's never enough time to slow down and help congregants understand it and let them do some work to heal and so on. Yeah.
But I think they don't want congregants to know it because, like you said, the way the music is, the way the order of service is, it's all to, get those neurochemicals going so that you want more. I mean, if you go back and listen to what we talked about, are we addicted to religion? I mean, it really is based on that. And if they took the time to talk to us about how our brains are taking in this information and why we're so, sitting on the edge of our seats and in these church services, if people really knew what was going on in their brains, I don't know how many would wind up staying.
Might not like being manipulated like
Right.
that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I knew when talking, and hardly ever on podcasts do I talk faster, and I don't know why, and that's something else to explore. but I knew when I was preaching, there was a certain way you had to do it, to keep people's attention, to make them want to come back, and to just, it's just the pitch of your voice and stuff that goes on while you're up there, which we acclaim to. Well, that was the Spirit working, and it's all kind of magic stuff, but it's like you say, it's real brain chemistry and what happens in your body when certain things happen externally to you. So,
and the messaging is very subtle. So, you know how it's kind of like in the same sermon, you can hear what a horrible wretch you are, but you're loved and you're redeemed, so it's very like, I mean, even thinking about it now, it just seems very confusing and hard for me to understand that, I didn't just go crazy hearing those mixed messages. Because now, like when I hear mixed messages from people, it makes me mad.
Yeah.
Because I feel, like you said, I feel like that is a form of manipulation. It's a form of gaslighting. It's a form of, narcissism, if you will.
Yeah. And takes the pressure off of congregants, because congregants can just show up and be entertained and taken on a journey, and then they know what to believe, how to act, and they'll blame it on the organization if it's wrong, right? We're just going to leave all the thinking to them. But the thing is, you lose yourself. And that's the whole point of this episode is, who am I? And what do I enjoy? What makes me happy? What do I want to pursue? What do I want to learn? And religion stunts that. At least doesn't totally, maybe it doesn't totally forbid it or keep you from doing it, but it definitely limits the time you have for that stuff. So
definitely,
if you're a good church member,
I guess.
I don't know about C&E Christians, but
yeah.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in today. We're glad that you stopped by and hope that you get something out of these questions. And as they develop and get them out there in more places, we'll let you know about them. Also, check out our sister podcast, I guess it is. Sister, daughter, something. It's Stuart Deloney, our son JD, and myself.
That would be a brother podcast.
Brother.
You're all bros, man.
Brothers, yeah. And we're talking about toxic preachers, toxic organizations, but also mental health moments, and just what we're picking up on the journey, what we're learning along the way.
Or unlearning.
Yeah. It's called the unlearning curve. And we hope you tune in. But as always, be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.